Alright, what is going on YouTube? Welcome to a 1v1 show match in between the Viper and the Muslim. This show match is hosted by Nili and it is played on the brand new patch, the January patch that just came out. So we will see the balance changes in effect today. This is going to be from recorded games and we'll jump into game number 1 straight away. A couple of extra rules to the show match is that we will only see Arabia being played today, Dry Arabia to be precise. And also, the players are not allowed to build stone walls. So those are two additional rules over here. There is $200 on the line as we jump into game number 1. And we already have some interesting civilization picks over here. We will have, as you will see that in the very next second, we will have down south Viper playing as the Holy Roman Empire in blue. And up north, the Muslim is going to be playing with the Delhi Sultanate in red. So, looking at these two civilizations, these were civilizations that definitely got their issues fixed, or at least some of their issues fixed in the January patch. Starting off with the Holy Roman Empire, the prelate bug has been fixed. So this means that you no longer will have the prelate sometimes bugging out and completely going ineffective. This was a bug that was there ever since the release, and basically what happens is the prelate sometimes gets bugged, and then he is not going to be able to inspire anymore. Obviously, that's a big issue because this is basically the heart and soul of the Holy Roman Empire economy. Now, the only way to unbug it was to get it into the Aachen Chapel. For this reason, alongside the fact that the Aachen Chapel is an insanely good landmark, the Aachen Chapel was basically a must-have for the Holy Roman Empire player when it comes to playing the game in any game mode, 1v1 Steam games, simply because the only way to unbug your prelate was to jump into the Aachen Chapel. Now, with that bug fixed, we could see some Minework Palace openings, which is technically a legitimate option for the Holy Roman Empire. Remember that they do have a great early aggression with the men-at-arms available for them, and the Minework Palace is a pretty powerful landmark as well. Part of the reason why it wasn't really used so far is because, as I said, you just can't afford to lose your prelate's boosting ability, so you basically needed to have the Aachen Chapel working for you. The Spearman bug of the Holy Roman Empire were also fixed, which means that now the HRE players will have their Spearman brace as well, appropriately. Same thing for the Delhi Sultan, so Delhi Spearmen are also able to brace right now, as we take a look at the base of the Muslim. And with the Delhi Sultanate, the devs also made some changes to technologies. Most notably, the research time of owned blades was reduced greatly, so if you remember the previous patch, so the one that was between November and January, owned blades was an upgrade that took a ridiculous amount of time to research, something like 10 minutes. So basically, that technology being so slow to research meant that the House of Learning was just such an ineffective landmark early game. So that being fixed or adjusted will mean that the House of Learning will also be a lot more viable. Anyways, those are the major changes affecting these civilizations for the time being. As we take a look at the base of the Muslim, so he's having a forward gold mine over here, not something that's really ideal. And if you look at his backup gold mines, those are kind of far away. Not necessarily a fan of that, to be honest. We do have one scholar and a mosque already out for the Muslim, and down south, the Viper. Pretty heavy on the gold department with 4 villagers out there, and we will have indeed the Minework Palace coming in. Now, obviously, this being only a show match and it's not like a gigantic tournament whatsoever, means that the players won't hesitate to, I guess, try new things or just experiment with stuff. So part of the reason why we could be seeing the Minework Palace here is simply because Viper is saying, okay, might as well try something with this. Now, if you play the Minework Palace, though, you will have to play a lot more aggressive game than compared to the Aachen Chapel. The Aachen Chapel is a landmark that's gonna give you a great economy, so all you need to do is just defend it. As compared to the Minework Palace, which you have to utilize as an aggressive landmark. So, in case you haven't seen this landmark so far, basically this is a blacksmith where the technologies cost quite a bit less, 25% less to be precise. And the reason why this is quite impactful, of course, is because this way you could get the range defense upgrade on your men-at-arms early, and then your men-at-arms are going to be very difficult to kill. Keep in mind that the HRE have men-at-arms available in Feudal Age, and the opponents don't have crossbows in Feudal, so especially against a civilization like the Delhi Sultanate, men-at-arms could be a very, very nice unit to go for. Meanwhile, on the other side, Dome of Faith coming in for the Muslims, still the go-to landmark for Feudal Age for the Delhi. Having the ability to produce scholars at a discount rate is immensely helpful because you can stack them up much easier inside those mosques, accelerating your research. So far, we've seen forestry being researched for the Muslim, and he's also gone efficient production, the usual technology to start with for the Delhi Sultanate, and now we are seeing piety come in for him. Barracks on the way for him. And with efficient production, once he pops out some scholars, he can also boost the production on those buildings, so that's also a nice little extra touch. Mindwerk Palace up for Viper, but no production buildings whatsoever. So you see, at this point, this landmark is basically doing nothing. As long as you don't have any kind of military on the field, this is a completely useless landmark. This is part of the reason why the Aachen Chapel is still probably the landmark that most players favor with the HRE, because the boost from the Aachen Chapel comes in immediately, whereas for the Mindwerk Palace, this is something that you will need some army to be able to utilize. Viper going for Wheelbarrow over here in Feudal Age. He does have a mill, but he isn't grabbing professional scouts. And speaking of professional scouts, they also were changed. So the scouts move a lot slower now that they are carrying carcasses. I hope that this will be shown in the show match once we get to like game 2-3. HRE could technically ferry in the carcasses as well, but well, that's not something that Viper is doing. Love the placement of this product, by the way, just in between the lumberjacks and the villagers on foot, so it's always able to inspire villagers. That's a very, very nice placement for Viper. The range of this product isn't too gigantic, and without the Aachen Chapel, you really need to place it smart. There is also a second product for Viper, inspiring the gold miners. This is something that you are likely going to see if the HRA player is going for the Mindwerk Palace, simply because the prelate boost is so big that you can easily justify adding a second prelate just to boost your eco. Looks like Viper is opening with an archer range for the time being. Viper with 2 scouts out, chasing down the one from the Muslim. The Muslim, meanwhile, is grabbing Hardened Spearman to start with. So far, he has 2 scholars in that mosque, and he's grabbing the siege upgrade early. That's a little unconventional. I would have thought that he's going to get some combat upgrades first, but no, he wants to go for the siege upgrade right away. Interesting decision, we'll see if that works out. If Viper plays very defensive, it could be a nice idea, as we already see a barracks coming out for Viper. First archers on the way for Viper. So far, this is a fairly peaceful game, and it actually helps the Muslim, because one of the biggest problems here to deal with for the Delhi Sultanate will be the early men-at-arms. Once he gets to Castle Age, it's alright, but in Feudal Age, that's going to be difficult to deal with. The good news is that the early men-at-arms are quite expensive for a Feudal Age economy, and Viper is actually coming in with early men-at-arms here. As I said, that's going to be difficult to deal with, especially if Viper grabs the defense upgrade. Now, he's going for the infantry speed upgrade first, marching drills, for the HRE, which is obviously a very nice upgrade as well. But in order to have your men-at-arms be very effective in Feudal Age, you really want to grab this upgrade, Iron Undermesh, because without that, the archers will be able to hold them off if you have a good amount of archers. And remember that it's much easier to mass archers than it is to mass men-at-arms. So, especially with the Delhi Sultanate now, only 7 seconds training time on those archers, you can get a nice ball of archers up very fast. So, you will need that extra defense on those men-at-arms, otherwise, a large amount of archers will still be able to deal with them. Now, as you see, you're going to have full archer production right now for the Muslim. As I said, that Scholar inspiring the archer range is basically the equivalent of the Council Hall for the English, as the Muslim is already coming out for the sacred site. This is one of the advantages that you can have with the Delhi Sultanate. Capture the sacred sites and you also get more resources from it, so it's a very, very nice combination here, forcing Viper to move out of his base. Men-at-arms are moving in for Viper, so he's going to neutralize and contest that sacred site, but the one on the right side for now seems to be falling into the hands of the Muslim, unless the archers arrive in time, which they do, so that Scholar is likely going to get picked off, although he's going to start to make a run for it. Might be able to sneak away if he gets into the stealth forest, because units sometimes just de-aggro when the opponent they are chasing goes into a stealth forest. Not the case in this scenario though, so that Scholar could also go down. The Muslim in a bit of a trouble right now, because he has been losing units left and right. He has lost 3 units, although he also killed 2 in the middle, so the archers are doing some work over here. He managed to finish off the scout of Viper. Now here come the men-at-arms. This is what I was referring to. These men-at-arms can soak up so much arrow fire. It is best utilized when you have archers behind them yourself, because then you actually have a damage dealing unit. As you see, the Muslim is able to kite away from these. This is where the extra attack on the men-at-arms in terms of their sword attack could help a lot, because obviously you will close the distance in between yourself and the archers, so you want to maximize the damage you put out. And I love the way that the Muslim is microing his archers right now. He's focusing down the opponent's archers because he knows exactly that worst case scenario, he trades archers evenly to his opponent, but it would take so much time to clean up those men-at-arms with only archers that it's probably the best for him to just trade archers with Viper. For the time being, it's 11 kills for Viper, 7 for the Muslim. The Muslim grabbing the sacred site on the left side, but we will see an archer neutralizing that. the Scholar actually got away. It's 12 HP Scholar all the way up north, already with 130 HP, so it's quite difficult to kill them actually. Meanwhile, the Muslim, already having Wheelbarrow finished, he's going to be pretty heavy on the berry department, obviously. The food eco of the Delhi Sultanate is very powerful if you have access to the berries. In fact, it's better than Viper's food eco. In general, the entire eco for the Muslim is better than Viper's one, and this is without any of those sacred sites. So if the Muslim can grab at least one of those, he's going to have a much better economy than Viper. In fact, if you look at that food count, 800 in the bank already for him and 280 gold as well. Keep in mind, the Viper's army, while effective, it's also very expensive because these men-at-arms cost 100 food apiece, whereas, for example, these archers only cost 30. So, obviously, Viper is winning these fights right now, but reality is that he's spending a ton of resources on winning these, and behind this one, the Muslim is getting closer and closer to Castle Age, and once he gets up to Castle, he's going to have access to the crossbowmen to deal with all the men-at-arms. For now, Viper is not charging into the base of the Muslim, and that is going to mean that so far, the Muslim did not lose a single villager, despite the fact that his army is not necessarily better than Viper's one. In fact, it is technically a weaker army because he doesn't really have an answer to the man-at-arms. Bit of a mismicro there by the Muslim, having one archer heavily damaged by those archers before turning around to fight. But ultimately, he's going to clean those up, and on the right side, he's slowing down this push as well. As things stand, the man-at-arms are crawling closer and closer. Viper now has gotten the range defense upgrade. You see, there is 4 range defense on those man-at-arms as opposed to just the free base melee armor. So Viper, leveraging those cheaper technologies, has gotten the attack upgrade on his archers and also the range defense upgrade on his units. Viper also moving out for a hunt on the left side. He's going to have that inspired by the prelate, so that's going to skyrocket his food economy, as you see on the top left. But comparing the current resources, the Muslim is quite a bit ahead. So he's about to get to Castle Age. The Muslim is a little low on the gold department, but aside from that, he's in a great position. And now the question becomes whether or not you go for the compound of the Defender or the House of Learning. Now, given the fact that the House of Learning got buffed, I would probably vouch for that. But now that I think about it, the stone walls are not allowed for players. This is a rule that they both agreed on. So going for the compound of the Defender makes literally no sense. Instead, what you're seeing over here is that if you can't make stone walls, just make palisades. And the Muslim is going to leverage the fact that the Delhi Sultanate players are able to use their infantry, including the archers, to make walls. He's going to wall in the sacred site and then capture it, making it very difficult for Viper's infantry to neutralize it. And indeed, we have the House of Learning coming in for the Muslim. On the other side, Viper is not far away from Castle Age either. In fact, he has the same issue as the Muslim had, just a little too low on gold, floating a ton of food, as the Muslim is also rushing up the walls on the right side. Since Viper's army is mostly men-at-arms and archers, those would have a tough time getting in here, because what the Muslim would do is just have the archers inside, pick off the archers from the inside, and then he can just slowly grind down the HP of the man-at-arms. So that's exactly what he's doing, you see. Trading off the archers. Looks like he won't be able to hold this sacred site for the time being, although the archer numbers are much, much better for the Muslim than the numbers of Viper. Muslim apparently is going to make a stand over here. He could micro those archers a tiny bit, just to make sure that he doesn't lose them as easily as he would be losing them without any kind of micro. It looks like he's going to call his forces off. He already got a pretty decent value for that sacred site. You see that he has gotten at least 66 gold for that. And on the left side, looks like the walls were incomplete, and now the man-at-arms are flooding in. That scholar has a ton of HP, so it should be able to survive. The Muslim getting forced back into his base on the right side, though. Still, as things stand, that man-at-arms is slowly getting cleaned up. Scholar trying to make a run for it. The Muslim could actually send one archer to finish that wall section, so the man-at-arms can't break out. And if he did that, then the Scholar would survive. Looks like the Scholar is just going to be dispatched to heal the man-at-arms. Viper is going to realize that and send the man-at-arms to kill the Scholar. But by the time he does that, the man-at-arms is going to get picked off. And it seems that the Muslim is going to be able to secure the sacred site on the left side. The one on the right side is still uncontested, but now we have Castle Age for the Muslim, and he's going for the own blades. As you see, after the changes of the January patch, now it once again has a legitimate research time. So it is only 3 minutes with a single mosque of free scholars. We have a second mosque coming in here as well, so it's possible that it is going to be accelerated even further. And first, it's going to be veteran archers for the Muslim, so no crossbows just yet. Love the way that he's expanding to the berries on the left side. This is going to delay his farm transition as opposed to Viper, who already had to add some farms. These farms being kind of ugly, to be honest. Obviously, it doesn't help that the houses are nearby, but not necessarily the most efficient farming placement by any means. On the right side, we have... wait a minute. How on the earth is the Muslim banking up so much gold? Hold on, hold the phone. What's happening here? 1600 gold in the bank. He's crazy on the gold mining as well. And of course, he does have the sacred sites. I assume he's going to start picking up relics soon as well. Maybe he already has some. I didn't check that. Nope. He doesn't seem to have a single relic, so looks like he just forgot about those gold miners out there, because I'm not gonna lie, he has been floating a ton of gold. That's a usual problem with the Delhi Sultanate, because once you get the sacred sites, your gold income is just crazy. Man-at-Arms upgraded to Castle Age Man-at-Arms as well for Viper now, so those veteran archers will once again struggle against them. But I would expect to see some crossbows hitting the field soon, or the Men-at-Arms of the Delhi Sultanate can also work early on. Remember, if you get owned blades, they will get +3 attack, so they will actually be slightly better than the initial Men-at-Arms of the HRE. Although once the Holy Roman Empire player grabs the Maces upgrade, they will be able to deal with these Delhi Men-at-Arms. So for now, the Men-at-Arms is a reasonable unit to add for the Muslim, but once Viper starts grabbing the infantry upgrades for the HRE, it's going to be HRE-sided once again. Speaking of which, Viper is grabbing the cheap upgrades on the Minework Palace, and we are, for now, not seeing the heavy maces or the 200 weapons being researched. As you see, even the relics are being walled in by the Muslim. Gotta love that. He's leveraging the fact that his army can build walls, and it's a small investment if you consider the fact that Viper needs those relics for Ragnitz Cathedral, because Viper does have the Ragnitz Cathedral up. Viper already has 2 relics under his control, but obviously he wants to have a minimum of 3 so he can cap out that Ragnitz Cathedral. The one on the right side is going to get denied. In fact, this prelate might even get intercepted by the archers. Looking at the other relics, I don't even see them, so there's a chance that the Muslim already has them. Does he? Yep. There's 2 relics over here for him, 2 for Viper, and 1 on the right side being walled in. Now here come Viper's forces, and he has veteran archers alongside a bunch of men-at-arms as well, so this is not a fight that the Muslim wants to take, unless he's got reinforcements coming from the north. I think at this point, his best case scenario is to actually run into this section, because this way he would be trading archers to archers. If he gets the archers... Ooh, he pops out the speed up buff. Gotta love that. You see that with the Forest March buff, your infantry is going to move a lot faster for a brief period of time. They can't attack, but this allows you to run away from the forces of Viper. It's a clever move. He could have stayed inside those walls and just trade off the archers. He decided to try and save the army. Mostly he did. He did lose a couple of archers though. Right now the army numbers are much better for Viper, if I'm not mistaken. 43 for the Muslim, 38 for Viper. Little surprising because we haven't seen a lot from Viper or from the Muslims army, but here it goes. That's why we didn't see any of it, because it is elephants and now he's slowly pushing up. There's already 2 sacred sites under his control, although Viper is about to contest the left-hand side one. But with those men-at-arms now coming in, they do have the own blades upgrade as well, and that is the perfect surround over here by the Muslim. Obviously using that sprinting ability to catch up with the archers helped a lot as well. That is an absolute massacre, and now the Muslim is pushing up with the men-at-arms. He's got 2 sacred sites, so if you look at the income per minute, as you see, 700 gold per minute for him. Given the fact that he's got 11... Wait, that's Viper. That's Viper. Viper's got 11 gold miners for about 1,000 gold per minute. On the other side, the Muslim has 8 gold miners for 840. And give Viper the fact that he's got the Ragnitz Cathedral with 2 relics soon free. So, given the fact that you're up against 3 relics of the opponent's HRE player, that gold income discrepancy isn't too big. So, the Muslim has done a beautiful job cutting into that, having 2 relics and also having the sacred sites, all of them under his control. So now, he's gonna have to just slow down Viper's push, and Viper's gonna have to push here, because otherwise he's going to lose the game on the sacred site condition. The countdown started at something like 18:15, so Viper has 10 minutes from now on to grab that. Now Viper's got the maces though, so even with the extra attack on those men-at-arms for the Delhi Sultanate, they won't be trading very well against those HRE men-at-arms. You see, that's going to be +6 heavy attack, and also with the bludgeon, it's 15 base attack as opposed to 16. So overall, Viper's men-at-arms will be very effective against those men-at-arms from the Muslim. But also, now that you have some elephants in the party, now that you have some men-at-arms as well, you could just add a couple of crossbowmen to even things out. Looks like that's not going to be part of the plan for the Muslim. He's just going to play with men-at-arms and elephants for the time being. Viper pushing up with a mangonel on the right side. Elephants, however, heading straight towards Viper's base, and I wonder if the Muslim is going to leverage the fact that Viper's army is rather slow moving. He's got infantry mostly, and it's kind of mispositioned right now. It's all the way on the far right. Looks like the Muslim actually had plans to start marching towards the right here, and now he sees Viper's army. Oh, that's beautiful. The Man-at-Arms is jumping on the Mangonel, and that's going to be a Mangonel taken down. Mangonel is rolling left, and it is going to be finished off by these Man-at-Arms. Now you got 4 elephants coming in here. The elephants don't perform that well against heavy infantry until they get the crossbow upgrade, which is Imperial Age. But they are still very, very tanky. They do have a decent amount of damage output, so they're actually excellent as an auxiliary unit to support your man-at-arms. In the middle, looks like we're going to have the Muslim pushing up with 1 elephant, couple of men-at-arms, also some scholars. So it's going to help healing up that army, and he can start knocking down buildings with those elephants. That's one of the biggest advantages that you can get. Being able to knock down buildings with your man-at-arms, so you don't need to make siege that much. Couple of archers from Viper counterattacking will be able to get, I think, 2 villager kills, but they will ultimately get cleaned up. Viper also neutralized the sacred site on the left side, but in exchange, on the right, this is a cleanup by the Muslim, cleaning up all of those man-at-arms. And in the middle, you also have an elephant. Man-at-Arms also coming in. Not sure why exactly this elephant is not attacking the building, but the siege workshop is already being taken down. Viper looks like he is switching into knights here. We've already seen a couple of knights on the battlefield. He's got a few as well. Now that the spearmen for the Delhi Sultanate can brace, though, obviously their chances are much, much better against those knights than they used to be in the previous patch. So I think the Muslim, if he just makes a couple of crossbows and spearmen back at home, he can slow this down and then just push that dagger very deep, because Viper is already struggling to hold off this force with only 2 elephants in here, and 2 more elephants are just now arriving. So you see, Viper, even with the emergency repairs, he isn't going to be able to keep that stable alive. He's just trying to buy himself some time so that he can get the knights on the field. There was 1 knight that popped out before that building was taken down. Viper launching counterattack with the knights as expected, but with the spearmen nearby, some elephants nearby as well, the casualties will be minimal on the Muslim side. He might lose 3, 4, 5 villagers here, but that will be compensated for by the sacred sites, and that will be compensated for by the fact that now he's pushing Viper's eco really heavily. Still would be beautiful to see some crossbowmen in here, because Viper's got a lot of heavy units, men-at-arms and knights, but it's not something that the Muslim is going for, and now the elephants can start marching into the base of the Viper. These units can also shoot while moving, so they can start just walking through those farmers or those lumberjacks and just start killing everything in their path. The Muslim currently at 56 military population, 58 vills. Viper has the same villager count, but only 10 military population. This counterattack is pretty much non-existent now. There's only 1 knight left of it, whereas this attack is still there for the Muslim, and he's now targeting the town center. He could technically take down the stables, but it seems like he didn't do that because Viper was popping those emergency repairs, so he couldn't really do that. I think 4 elephants should be satisfactory, though, to take down the stables. You could even target the houses, because those can be killed quite easily, and you could just get Viper housed. Viper popping emergency repairs once again. The problem here for the Snake is that even though your town center stays alive, your economy is just collapsing. So you see so many farms abandoned. He lost quite a few villagers as well, so he's down to 53 as opposed to something like 62 or so from the Muslim at this point. Indeed, as you see, 52 versus actually 55. Viper has been getting some kills on the north here. This is something that the Muslim didn't realize. It's a little sloppy from our red player here, because that was easily 6-7 villagers lost in here. And now it looks like the Muslim is calling a retreat. Still, he's starting to knock down houses, and as I said, that's probably the easiest way for him to play this. It's probably the biggest annoyance for Viper right now, to lose the houses. Also, the Muslim grabbing the sacred site in the middle. Knights will charge in on that scholar, so the scholar is going to go down. On the left side, you already have a Volgin sacred site. On the right side, it's also being captured by the Muslim. And now, if you look at his economy, it's starting to take over compared to Viper's one. Gold count is still better. Gold income is better for Viper because he's got the Regnitz Cathedral with 3 relics. But you also see an elephant marching on the left side, and that's basically the heart and soul of Viper's food economy. 2 mills, birth of farms, and of course a bunch of berry villagers. With those farms already denied near the town center, Viper's food eco is just going to collapse. And if you think about the fact that the Muslim now has 3 sacred sites as well under his control, Viper wasn't able to get more than 15 military units on the battlefield for the last 10 minutes. And with that, Viper taps out of game number 1, the Muslim winning with the Delhi over the HRE. We'll take a look at the statistics for this game in a matter of moments. I'll have to bring those up separately because, as you may know, if you watch a recorded game, then you won't be brought up the stats at the end of the game. So I will have to look it up. So hang on for a brief moment while we bring those stats up. I'm curious at the overall resource distribution because I feel like the two players pretty much had the same amount of resources gathered, but it was more about the fact that DeMusliM was able to get up to Castle Age so fast, and of course, his units also have a very nice resource retention, so those elephants are very expensive, but they're also very difficult to kill, especially when you have scholars nearby. So DeMusliM basically didn't lose a lot of units in the second half of this game, and part of the reason why he was able to overrun Viper is because Viper has been losing his infantry at a quite rapid pace. Alright, so here are the stats. Economies, 2,000 more food for the Muslim, that's mostly from the berries of the Delhi Sultanate. Gold, slightly better for Viper, so Regnis Cathedral is still going strong. Wood, better for the Muslim. Some stone also mined by Viper. Military though, 133 kills, 121 deaths over here for the Muslim. I'm actually curious at the military timeline though, and this is what I was referring to. The Muslim was barely using units. Most of those that were killed were leftover archers or some men-at-arms, spearmen, but the core of his army, which was the elephants, never really got damaged or killed, whereas Viper's army was slowly ground down. So basically, despite the fact that the resources are sort of even between the two players, at the end, the reason why the Muslim won this game is because his army was just very difficult to destroy. So Viper could barely destroy any value or any investment of the Muslim, whereas on the other side, the Muslims slowly ground down Viper's forces, and Viper constantly had to spend resources to rebuild those. All right, so let's jump straight into game number 2. Just like game number 1, this is also going to be from recorded games, and it looks like we're going to have the Rus for the Muslim, and Viper is going to be picking the Abbasid dynasty. All right, so welcome to game number 2. Once again, we're going to Arabia. Up north is going to be the Viper playing the Abbasid dynasty in blue, opening with a second scout, whereas down south we will have the Rus here for the Muslims. So I mentioned this in game number 1. The fact that the professional scouts were nerfed is actually a heavy nerf as well to the Rus. The warrior monks carrying relics were also slowed down, so now the scouts carrying carcasses and the warrior monks carrying relics are both slower than before. So we'll have to see how this works out. It definitely made Rus a little weaker, but from what I've seen from the patch notes, I really feel like the Rus Warrior Monk being slowed down isn't going to be enough, simply because you will still be up to Castle Age quite fast, and your Warrior Monks will still have a very easy time getting to the relics. That's the thing. When you have foot monks, so like walking ones, not the ones riding horses, you need to walk from your monastery to the relic and then back. And obviously, as you're walking to the relic, you could also get intercepted and killed by just one knight. That's not the case for warrior monks. They could still run in here and just pick up the relic, start bringing back. The other thing to consider is that, let's say that, okay, I'm carrying the relic back, my warrior monk is now slow. If I see, let's say, 5 knights closing in, and I'm like, oh shoot, I would lose my warrior monk, you probably just drop the relic and run. Because your opponent can't be there at every single relic, so I'm not exactly sure what to think about that nerf. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, but I'm not sure if it's enough with the Rus Warrior Monks. Anyways, as you see, Viper is doing a pretty decent job dealing with the Huntables. He's cleaning up one patch from the Muslim, and he also managed to aggro 2 wolves, so this is a solid 120 bounty denied from our red player here. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Muslim is going to take 1 patch of Huntables from Viper, also aggroed 1 wolf, and he's just now grabbing his additional scouts. So as things stand, the Muslim is at 160 bounty, not great, not terrible. With that wolf, it would be 185. And there is another wolf that he could aggro any moment. So I kind of feel like, especially if he gets a couple more wolves in here for himself, like he's doing in the middle, there's 2 more wolves following that scout, he should be able to get to that 250 level, and that's exactly where you want to get to. Viper is going to try and aggro that wolf, but that is going to fall into the hands of the Muslims, so now he has to run away with this. Viper, of course, will take shots on this, but in this scenario, you just have to run with your scout, because what you're looking at is Viper is going to shoot that wolf. And what you are waiting for is Viper to take it down to free HP, and when he takes it down to free, you turn back and shoot, just like the Muslim did that. Exactly. Because if your opponent shoots, he's going to have to wait before the next shot. So you will have a window to kill the animal. So just wait until your opponent grinds down the HP so that it is a one shot for you, and then you one shot it. That's exactly how you have to play that, and that was a beautiful execution there by DeMusliM. There were also two more wolves somewhere, and I didn't really see the bounty jump up until now, so they probably just got killed. 250, and you're going to have some more gold from that wolf. So DeMusliM getting to 275 is a pretty decent accomplishment. In a 1v1, you are targeting that 250 mark, so you're unlocking that tier 2 bounty. And as usual, we're going to see the Golden Gate being built here by DeMusliM. He's not really rushing that. He's only going up with 4 villagers. Meanwhile, on the other side, House of Wisdom already up for Viper. He is coming in with the economy wing. Looks like it is a 1000er build. He's not on stone, but he's still heavy on the gold department. So makes me wonder why exactly that is there. Obviously, fresh foodstuffs is something that you want to get gold for, but it's because you do that, and because you keep gold miners on gold for quite a long time with the Abbasids, sometimes you just keep them there a little longer and also grab an upgrade like professional scouts potentially. With Viper going for barracks, that's going to be an unlikely scenario though, so I guess it's just going to be for fresh foodstuffs, although he has the gold already and he hasn't pulled the villagers, so we'll have to see about that one. Other side, Feudal Age is in, and you would expect professional scouts to be popped any moment. Indeed, here it goes. So you will start thinking about ferrying in the deer. So one of the side effects of the carcasses being brought in slower is going to be that it's much more difficult for you to ferry in the deer from your opponent's side. There's a much bigger trade-off. As long as the movement speed with carcasses is the same as the movement speed without, obviously you can just walk out here and take the opponent's hunt. But when you have to carry those carcasses back from all the way out here and your scouts are slower when carrying carcasses, there's a bigger trade-off. You might say, okay, it's easier for me to just bring these in and start gathering from the carcasses as fast as possible as compared to taking all the way, or all these, from all the way out here. We'll have to see about that one, but I can see less laming with the Rus, just taking the opponent's hunt, simply because you want to jump on those carcasses as fast as possible. So I would assume that you start off with your own patch, although it looks like the Muslim scouts are all the way up front, so it's possible that he's going to start off with this patch of huntables. He's looking around the berry bushes of Viper here. For now, Viper is on berries, obviously a very nice source of food for the Abbasid dynasty. Viper also has got some spears out, so this will tell the Muslim that his opponent is going for a couple of spearmen. He already has a barracks, of course, and there is also going to be an archer range. Wonder if the Muslim saw that, and we'll never know because the spec overlay is bugged and it doesn't show the buildings, but it is what it is. It's possible that the Muslim also saw the archer range. Meanwhile, for Viper, gotta love the placement of scouts. He's going to have vision on the Muslim's base. Just look at that vision. That's perfect. He knows exactly if the Muslim is moving out towards this patch of huntables, and he knows exactly if he's going for berries or if he ever wants to move out to the right side. So he's got very, very good vision right now. Scouts are now coming in, and this is what I was referring to, scouts being much slower when moving in. For reference, a spearman is 1.25 tiles per second movement speed. Scouts carrying carcasses is 1.06, so technically spearmen can also catch them. Now, realistically, the spearman will still need quite a lot of kills to kill a scout. This will probably mean that you won't be able to take the hunt of the opponent if there are spearmen nearby, because obviously they will catch up to you, stab you, and then once again there's going to be a bit of a distance between you, because as the animation goes, the scout still moves away. Regardless, when you have such a big distance, the spearman will be able to get multiple hits in and probably kill the scouts even. So even spearmen could work out nicely, but I think the biggest beneficiaries of the scout speed nerf when carrying carcasses is going to be the horsemen, because the horsemen can easily chase down the scouts now. Viper for now is going to be playing with spearmen, and you see he's denying this patch of carcasses, and this is why I was referring to those scouts being very well positioned, because now Viper knows very well that his opponent is going for the patch on the right side. The Muslim tried to jump on that archer, trying to isolate it, but there's a spearman nearby, so he won't be able to do it. And as things stand, Viper is doing a pretty decent job denying those relics. Now, or denying those hunts. Now, does that matter? Absolutely not. And the reason why is because the Muslim is already going into Castle Age, so he has just gotten a couple of carcasses in, but of course with all that bounty working for him, he was able to get to Castle Age And he's going up with 1 barracks and also 2 ranges. Now, given the fact that he's up against spearmen and archers only, you could justify going for full men-at-arms. But realistically, I think it's fine if you make a mixture of men-at-arms and horse archers, because right now Viper's army is slow, so even just a handful of horse archers being on the battlefield could give you that mobility component, and you could just hit the gold miners from behind, you could hit the lumberjacks. Whereas if you're full men-at-arms, you're going to have a very powerful army, but you have to make a straight push into the base of Viper. Carcasses are now being brought back. Viper abandoned those huntables for some time, so DeMusliM was able to bring in the carcasses. Here come the Rams. So there are going to be some heated moments over here for DeMusliM, and he knows that. He's going to grab a couple of archers. I like the archer addition here for him, because he just needs to pick off some of those units and then jump on the ram with the villagers. DeMusliM didn't go for the tower on the lumberjacks, which means that those are all exposed. But of course, he's got these scouts here, so he can try to jump on that ram with the scouts. And now the men-at-arms should be the main component of his army. Horse archers are also coming in. But once he's got like 3 or 4 men-at-arms in here, he can repel this attack quite easily. The big thing is not letting that barracks go down, because that's the scary part here. If that barracks goes down, adding additional men-at-arms will be a little concerning, and DeMusliM might have some trouble some moments here. Spearmen now popping out as the scouts get nearby. Still, as you see, villagers will be pulled. I think at this point, given the situation, you sacrifice a couple of villagers to keep that barracks alive and get a couple more men-at-arms out here. Ram still quite a bit intact though, and this is looking worse and worse for DeMusliM right now, because those forces from Viper are still there. Spearmen have mostly been taken down though. There are still some archers, horse archers now on the battlefield. Looks like DeMusliM might be able to repel this attack, because the barracks is still standing and Viper is not focusing down the repair villagers. Another men-at-arms is about to pop out. DeMusliM pulls a couple more vills, and I think this barracks is staying up with so many villagers nearby. The forces of Viper are now gone, so now the villagers, the men-at-arms, can burn down this ram, and this was a very expensive push for Viper. He almost managed to take down that barracks, and this is why I love this barracks addition for DeMusliM. If he didn't have this, he would have died here, because the horse archers would have struggled quite mightily against that push. But now that you got the men-at-arms going, the men-at-arms are able to soak up so much arrow fire, deal with the spearmen. Now, DeMusliM shouldn't let that barracks burn down. There is one villager repairing it, so he should be fine. Now he's going to start mixing in the horse archers. One thing we haven't talked about when it comes to the changes in the new patch is that the horse archer speed, or the attack speed, was actually fixed. This basically was a bug before. They fired a lot faster than they were supposed to, so they're also slightly weaker. Haven't seen them in action so far, so let's see how they perform. Yeah, it's noticeably slower. You see that the horse archers having that, I'm not even sure how to call that animation, when the horse stands on 2 back foot. I don't even remember that being a thing in the previous version of the game. So their firing rate is much, much slower, so they definitely seem a lot weaker. Horse archers now galloping forward to hit the lumberjacks or the gold mine of Viper. Viper is on the way to Castle Age, coming in with the Culture Wing. He's currently on 2 barracks, 2 ranges, and given the fact that there's only 5 horse archers coming in, he should be able to counter this with foot archers. In general, foot archers are supposed to counter horse archers, but before this patch, since horse archers were extremely powerful, that wasn't really the case in many situations. On the right side, you see some men-at-arms moving to the right. I assume that DeMusliM is looking for villagers of Viper moving out for berries or the hunt, but he's going to find nothing because Viper is still within his own base. Horse archers now moving in here from DeMusliM. He's going to bump into a couple of archers, but with good micro, you could pick off quite a lot of those forces, and that's exactly what we're seeing. On the left side, deer are still being ferried in, and at this point, DeMusliM doesn't have to play aggressive. And this is what I was referring to when I was talking about the warrior monk changes. Of course, your warrior monks will be much slower, but you still are one of the fastest players into Castle Age with the Rus, and it's not like your opponent will have a great chance of denying those relics. So, you see, warrior monks will be slower gathering relics now, but I would be very surprised if Rus players in such a matchup would be below 3 relics once all the relics have been collected. So, even with the nerfs, I think that the opponents maybe have a chance to grab 2 relics at maximum. Defense upgrade coming in for Viper as he's about to reach Castle Age. that Iron Undermesh is going to be quite vital because he's now up against quite a lot of horse archers, so having that extra range defense on the archers and the spearmen will be quite beneficial. And now you see some men-at-arms converging on Viper's base from the right side. Viper's forces are mostly on the left, and he doesn't really have a good answer to those men-at-arms, and look at this. The timing of this push is great from the DeMusliM. Horse archers on the left side, and also moving in on the right side with the men-at-arms and the archers. These two-pronged attacks are just key elements of pro gameplay, and they're often underappreciated, because if you only attack from one side, the opponents will be able to react quite fast. But when you have an attack from two sides, one of those sides are almost guaranteed to have a couple of villagers killed, simply because your opponent can't look at the map in various locations at the same time. Second relic already in for the DeMusliM, as you see horse archers finally getting cleaned up on the north, but that was just the first batch of horse archers, and you see that the DeMusliM isn't even going super aggressive here at this point. He is grabbing a second Townsender, something that you don't necessarily see that often with the Rus. Also grabbing a blacksmith just now, so now that he's seeing that the opponent has quite a lot of archers on the battlefield, he's probably gonna get the ranged upgrade, or the ranged defense upgrade. And wouldn't be surprised to see a siege workshop coming in as well for the DeMusliM, because he's up against a lot of light infantry here. Talk about spearmen, talk about archers. Some mangonels could work very nicely over here. Of course, Abbasids can make springolds with their infantry, so it's not going to be easy to use those mangonels. But at this point, he doesn't even need to. He just needs to collect relics. I'm a little surprised if we're not seeing more warrior monks from him. I could justify, especially given the fact that it takes more time to collect relics, I could justify adding 2 more warrior monks just so that you can bring those relics up a little faster. You see, once again, warrior monks 1.22 speed when carrying in the relic, slower, and it allows the opponent to intercept these monks. But especially if you escort those monks with horse archers, it's still difficult to kill those monks. And because of that, obviously the relic collection of the Rus was delayed, but it's nowhere close to being stopped. And as you see, the infantry here will still not really be able to catch the warrior monk. And as I said, the worst case scenario for the DeMusliM is that he drops off the relic. He's going to pop the conversion here. Nope, not happening. He's going to discourage the archers from getting closer. But I think what he should have done is just drop the relic, run away, and then whenever this army leaves, just go back for the relic. Anyways, as you see, relic number 4 falling into the hands of the DeMusliM already. And it's not like Viper is doing a bad job contesting those, it's just the fact that Rus are still up to Castle Age so fast that they have just such a big time window to start collecting those relics. Whereas, obviously, Abbasids is definitely a civilization that takes a lot of time to get to Castle Age, with the wings having a preset time of 2 minutes for the construction. Viper got a market up now. He is playing with 1 Townsender right now, so that means that the DeMusliM should have a slight eco lead. 55 for the DeMusliM, 36 for Viper, that's more than a slight. We have seen some villagers being killed from Viper, of course, but I didn't expect this villager gap to be this big. This is a gigantic hole for Viper to be in. He's adding a couple of men-at-arms himself. Nice micro by the DeMusliM to pick off the spearmen. Now he's going to try and focus the archers. Nice way to pick off the light units, because he knows exactly that the horse archers won't do that well against the men-at-arms. So he's going to focus the light units over here. Viper now crawling up with some archers. But as you see, relic number 4 coming in for the DeMusliM. And this relic number 5 is basically accessible for him as well. He already has a gigantic food eco advantage, has a farming eco set up already. And of course, 2 town centers definitely helps a lot here for the DeMusliM too. So at this point, you're seeing the same thing for the Rus as you have seen before the patch. It's just a little slower to build it up. I'm not exactly sure how the warrior monks could be fixed though, because this is something we haven't talked about yet. Because no matter how much you slow them down carrying the relic, they will still have the chance to avoid enemies as they are going towards those relics. So the whole concept of relic collection and monks in Age of Empires games, not just AoE 4 but AoE 2 as well, is that your monks are slow and they can't really fight back that much aside from the conversion attempt. So it's easy for your opponents to kill them and prevent you from picking up relics. But here, having that extra mobility for the warrior monks is massive. Viper setting up 2 mangonels here, getting a nice shot on those men-at-arms. Now the men-at-arms are jumping on the mangonels. Another good mangonel shot comes in. But Viper's only got archers in here, so despite the fact that those men-at-arms are heavily damaged, and despite the fact that the mangonel shots were quite nice, the horse archer plus men-at-arms combination of the DeMusliM is now going to give him a massive lead. Also, with those warrior monks on the battlefield, he's going to have the Saint's Blessing buffing his units, so +1 armor, +2 damage. Definitely a factor to consider as well. And now Viper is in full fallback mode. And a problem for him is that in order to deal with the horse archers, he needs mass foot archers. Talk about archers. But in order to deal with the men-at-arms, you need some crossbowmen. So you sort of have to make a mixture of this. But it's pretty difficult to balance it out, because if you make too many foot archers, the men-at-arms will kill you. If you make too many crossbows, the horse archers will kill you. And as you see, Viper is constantly getting forced back. Obviously, it helps a lot for those horse archers that they can just trail this army with their mobility and just keep getting some shots out. Slowly but surely the meat shield disappears for the Muslim, but he's been taking down important forces of Viper for a long time, and you see that with so few archers on the battlefield, you could even have these horse archers engage this, because as you see, they can just grind down those numbers, and Viper even taps out of this one. There was no other counterattack coming into his base, so it was all about his army disappearing. And of course, his eco was much, much weaker than the opponent's eco. So we were talking about 5 relics for the Muslim and a massive villager lead as well. We'll take a look at the statistics after this game once again, but the Muslim securing a very confident second victory here. Viper did a decent job denying the relics, or excuse me, the hunts. Relic-wise, he did his best, but that wasn't really a possibility. I think the biggest problem here was that the Rus getting into Castle Age will still be very powerful because of the warrior monks. I think you want to deny that fast castle from them. And while the spearmen and archers could work, I think horsemen is something you can justify a lot more. Because the horsemen would be able to trail those scouts much faster. Part of the reason why Viper had trouble denying all the hunt is because his spearmen are still relatively slow compared to the scouts that don't have carcasses carried. So if the hunt on the left side is denied by Viper, the Muslim is just going to move to the right side with the scouts, pick up the carcasses and ferry them back in. If there were horsemen on the battlefield that have high mobility, those would have been able to pick off those scouts. Can it stop the fast castle? Not sure, but it definitely slows it down to a point where Viper could leverage the fact that his castle age time is comparable. But as you see, the castle age timings were very different here. The colors are off because that's something that's broken for recorded games, so do note that the Muslim is represented in blue over here and Viper is in red. But you see, this is like a 9-minute castle age timing. This is like a 30.5 minute. That's a big difference here. Economies, the Muslim with 5,000 more food. Gold was mined a lot more by Viper, but of course with the Rus you don't need a ton of gold. More wood for the Muslim as well. Military-wise, 64 to 47. And of course, 5 relics for the Muslim, despite the fact that the relics are now much slower to bring in with the warrior monks. Alright, this brings us to game number 3, and it looks like we have a civilization matchup that we had before. It is going to be Delhi versus the Holy Roman Empire. This time around, Viper is going to have the Delhi Sultanate, and the Muslim is going to have the Holy Roman Empire. So in we go. Down south, we'll have the Viper playing as the Blue Delhi, and up north, you're going to have the Muslim playing as the Red Holy Roman Empire, starting off with a prelate as you would expect. Whereas on the other side for Viper, he's just going to open with extra vills, going for a mill immediately, alongside a lumber camp and a mosque. So part of the reason why you're opening with a mill here for the Delhi is because you want to start upgrading the wheelbarrow technology as soon as you have that mill up, and obviously the sooner you get it up, the sooner you can start. And of course, an added benefit is the fact that you will have access to the berries with more food on them, and being Delhi, having the extra berries on them, and of course having the faster getter rate from berries, that's going to make your food eco pretty nice as well. And of course, same thing goes for lumber camp. The faster you get it up, the sooner you can start researching forestry. Up north, looking at the Muslim, his base is actually very similar. Hold on. Hold on. No, it's not the identical map, right? So, what I was thinking about here, just for an explanation, is that if the players, like, technically the players have the chance to play the exact same map if they type in a certain seed, because each map has a seed. I can show that. This is the seed of that map that we're playing right now. There's even a copy button over here. So, what happens is that when players play tournaments, especially in later rounds, oftentimes they're playing pre-picked seeds. And the reason why is because some maps are bugged or sometimes spawn unfair. And tournament organizers are trying to make sure that the maps that spawn or the maps that are played are balanced, and they do that by having a couple of pre-picked seeds. Obviously, the players don't know how those seeds look like, so they're only provided just before starting the game. But sometimes you could technically have the player that's hosting the lobby forgetting to delete that seed and starting off with the same map. That's not the case over here, but the map is very similar to game number one. The only difference, as I'm noticing, is that the sacred sites are a lot more spread out. So in game number one, you had like one sacred site on the left, one over here, and then like one over here. But here, we have them a lot more spread out, but everything is very similar for the Muslim. Gold mine right next to his forest on the front, berries on the right, another forest up north over here, a very, very similar base. For Viper, it's quite similar as well, to be honest. The lumberjacks are once again at the back. Don't remember the berry spots for Viper, neither do I remember the gold mine spot, but it really looks like a similar map to game number one. Anyways, Chapel coming in here for the Muslim. I still believe that despite the fact that the Minewerk Palace is a little more legitimate now that the prelates don't bug out, the Chapel is just such a spectacular landmark, and it's going to give you a boost for the entire game. The problem with the Minewerk Palace is that the biggest advantage you're getting is in early Feudal Age. When you get to Feudal and you want to get those technologies for a lower cost. The problem here is that beyond mid-late Feudal Age, it has minimal impact, because while the technologies are still cheaper, you could just make a blacksmith if you're going up with the Chapel. So 25% cost reduction is very nice, but in Feudal Age, that's like 25 gold on a technology, and something like 10 food or so. It's a little more than that, actually. But anyways, the point being is that the discount on the technologies is not as big as the buff that you're getting from the Chapel. So obviously the technologies will cost you more on the blacksmith, but the Chapel is going to boost your entire economy so effectively with a single prelate garrison that you could afford those more expensive technologies quite easily still. Other side, for Viper, he's going up with the Dome of Faith as you would expect. He has gotten efficient production, now he's going for Piety, following it up with Herbal Medicine. Meanwhile, on the other side, looks like we're going to have an eco-focused approach for the Muslim. So if you're going for the Chapel, you really don't need to rush a lot of things. If you go for the Minewerk Palace, you need to leverage the fact that you can get those technologies right at the beginning of Feudal Age for a lower cost. So the Minewerk Palace, I would associate that with a very aggressive early Feudal Age. Men-at-Arms, potentially archers coming in. If you go for the Chapel, you probably play a little more passive. There is no meal for the Muslim, which means that professional scouts is probably not part of the plans. He doesn't have a lot of sheep to work with, though, so that's something worth monitoring for the time being. Viper up to Feudal Age a little faster, and he's grabbing the scholars right at the beginning. He's grabbing horticulture as well, probably lumberjacking coming in, and even gold mining, so all the technologies queued up for Viper as we speak. Meanwhile, for the Muslim, he's only building the Chapel with one villager, so he really is not rushing Feudal Age. He's going to take his time going up. But of course, if you take your time to go up, that also gives you a chance to collect a ton of resources as you are going up to Feudal Age. So if you look at those resource counts, it's very possible that the Muslim is going to end up going for Castle Age straight away. Looks like Iron Undermash started to be the thing for Viper, but then he cancelled it, and he's going to start with Steel Arrow in the end. I think Steel Arrow makes a little more sense for him if he's just going archers and he doesn't really know what his opponent is up to. Like, going for the defense upgrade on your units, I mean the range defense, only makes sense if your opponent is making archers, which is not the case over here. Looking at the Muslims' resource bank, it is 800, 500, so, as I said, you can pretty much go for Castle Age straight away. Love the way that he's killing the hunt with the scout, and just look at what he did. He comes at the back of the deer and he's pushing them closer to the mill. That's a very clever way of doing things. Very underappreciated in many cases. He actually pushed them away the mill, so it's a little sloppy. But you see what he's doing. He's pushing in the deer and he's going to kill them close to the mill. It's a small difference, but it is a difference compared to not having them pushed in and having them all the way out here. The Muslim, having his Chapel empower his lumberjacks and gold miners, also has an extra prelate out here that's going to boost the food gatherers. And you see Scout is helping quite actively, making sure that those carcasses are as close to the mill as possible. DeMusliM is likely going Castle Age straight away here, whereas for Viper, he's leveraging the fact that his opponent isn't really contesting the map, so he can just move out for the berries, kind of like that. You could even pull some more villas to the left side, because the berries are a very nice source of food for a deli, and Viper's resource bank isn't looking that bad either. 550 and 350 gold. But of course, our HRE player is now going into Castle Age, 2 barracks coming in, and he's actually adding quite a lot of men-at-arms. A little surprising that he's adding them already. I think he's a little afraid of Viper showing up to push him. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because it's just a matter of seconds to get to Castle Age for him. So, for a moment, I thought he's going to have his Castle Age delayed by all those men-at-arms being added. But since his food eco is quite good and his gold eco is also very nice, now he only has 1 gold miner because he's building the Regnitz Cathedral with the gold miners. He was able to get the resources he needed, and now he's going to start popping out the men-at-arms. Meanwhile, for Viper, looks like he's moving out for the sacred sites as we speak. First Scholar now moving in. Only 90 HP on those yet. He just now finished the upgrade for a 130, so now those are pretty tanky as well. Going for the sacred sites. Of course, now that DeMusliM is in Castle Age, she's gonna have men-at-arms, and that's something that Delhi struggle against. We have seen in game number 1 that the Delhi have answers once they get to Castle Age. So elephants, crossbowmen, yada yada. But when in Feudal Age, Delhi is going to have a tough time against the men-at-arms, especially if those are Castle Age men-at-arms. For now, this single man-at-arms is going to get pushed back. You see, DeMusliM is trying to get the hits on the Scholar, because he knows exactly that if he hits the Scout, it's going to get healed up. If he hits the Archer, same thing. So he's trying to intercept that Scholar, making sure that Viper isn't able to grab the Sacred Site. On the left side, Viper is grabbing that one as we speak. Single man-at-arms coming in for DeMusliM. Would love to see a stable from him, to be honest. And just grabbing the knights, like even just 1 or 2 knights could help so much killing these Scholars. Looks like it's just going to be 2 barracks for the time being. He's up to Castle Age already, and he's probably walking out for the relics. 1 is already being brought in. Viper on the right side also grabbing the Sacred Site, and Viper is also going to Castle Age with the compound of the Defender. Now, I'm a little puzzled about this one, because the players agreed not to build stone walls, and the sole purpose of having the compound of the Defender up, as you see over here, is that your infantry can make stone walls. So I'm not exactly sure what to think about that. There's a possibility that Viper has forgotten this, but if he did, well, he just made a completely useless landmark, because according to the agreement of the players, stone walls will not be utilized. Now, when it comes to stone walls, we can distinguish 2 things though. Like, having, let's say, your entire base stone wall is not the exact same thing as, let's say, having a section of stone wall with a stone wall tower. We're seeing that quite a lot from Delhi, just making a section of stone wall and basically using the stone wall towers. So it's not even about the walls themselves, it's about the towers on them. For now, we have the Castle Age man-at-arms upgrade in for DeMusliM. Nothing else though, no heavy maces, no 200 weapons for him. He has managed to bring in 2 relics already. We have 1 in the middle. This technically is accessible for him, and he's about to come in for it. I think he's going to have the army here to make sure that he can grab that. The 2 on the left side are going to be more difficult to grab. Maybe the 1 close to the Sacred Site is going to be accessible. But as things stand, he's going to have at least 3 relics for him to work with. So that's going to be 900 gold per minute from the Regnitz Cathedral. Man-at-arms doing a lot of work over here. Viper mixing in some crossbows. Those will definitely help. But you need something in front of them, like your own man-at-arms. Viper is adding those as we speak. Obviously, not having the House of Learning means that those man-at-arms will never have own blades. So there is not going to be a single window in this game where they're better than the HRE man-at-arms. Ultimately, they will be weaker than the HRE man-at-arms no matter what, because the HRE have the 200 weapons and the maces upgrade. But now we're seeing some elephants hit the field here from Viper. And elephants were basically the deciding factor in game number 1, especially if supported by crossbowmen. This could be dealt with quite difficultly only. Now, if Viper is only going elephants and crossbowmen, so no man-at-arms in that army, the answer is mass spearmen. Because crossbows struggle against massed light units like spearmen, and elephants, they will just get overrun. They will be able to deal quite nicely with a few spearmen because they do have a very nice ranged attack, and that can pick off light infantry quite easily. But they could easily get overrun, and once the spearmen close the distance, they'll be able to do a ton of damage to the elephants. So, especially with the HRE infantry having a higher movement speed, an upgrade that DeMusliM has already gotten, you can really imagine those spearmen overrunning the elephants. It looks like Viper is making stone walls, so he may have just forgotten about the agreement, because here comes the first section of stone walls, and as you would expect, there's a tower coming on this. This is actually a pretty nice way to play with stone walls. Whenever I'm playing, which is not something very frequent, I only play 1 or 2 games every month, I like to do this when I need to secure map control, because these are pretty difficult to destroy, especially in Castle Age, so they're very good to secure map control, and then you just have so much buffer in front of your base if your opponent wants to counterattack. Another section of stone walls coming in for Viper on the left side as well. On the right, stone wall tower is still being constructed, and now Viper deletes it. That was a delete. I assume that he forgot about the rolls, and then I assume Viper was streaming this. I wasn't actually actively looking at his stream when he played this show match, so I don't know, but I assume he did that, and someone maybe on chat said, hey, you agreed not to make stone walls. The ones on the left side are still intact, but I would think that they are also going to get deleted, given the fact that the ones in the middle got deleted as well. DeMusliM went for the Sacred Side on the left side, will be intercepted by the crossbows and the men-at-arms. And for now, it looks like DeMusliM has a couple of infantry moving all the way to the far right. Speaking of far right, you already have Viper coming in with a couple of crossbows and some scholars. Right now, Viper is only elephants, crossbows, so you really want to start thinking about the spearman approach here. For now, DeMusliM wants to go for men-at-arms, although we're now seeing some Landsknechte mixed in. That's a unit I completely forgot about, and it's not a bad idea either. If you think about it, Landsknechte are also light infantry, which means that the crossbows won't have bonus damage against them, and they also have a area melee attack, which means that if you have a clustered up group of units like the crossbowmen, they could do a ton of damage once they get close. Viper triggering the Sacred Side victory. That's obviously going to give him a very nice resource trickle as well, but as you see, DeMusliM with 900 gold per minute, exclusively coming from the Ragnitz Cathedral, he's gonna be more than happy with that. It's only 3 relics for him. There is 1 relic still untaken by either of these players, and I think Viper may have gotten 1 on the left side. Yeah, there is 1 in the hands of that scholar. So the Landsknechte could also work. The thing I'm not really a big fan about for Landsknechte is, as you see, they have a very low HP and they're very expensive. So compared to the Spearman, it's a gigantic jump in the cost. 60 food for both, but 100 gold versus 20 wood. So the biggest problem with the Landsknechte is that they will also get killed quite easily by the Elephant's fire, and they are much harder to replace than Spearmen. Now, will they work? 100%. If you can afford a Landsknechte, they're going to work wonders here. The question is, can you afford them? As things stand, as you see, the men-at-arms are slowly being ground down and the Landsknechte also getting killed. I really feel like, while the Landsknechte is great, it would only work if you have a gigantic eco and you can just flood them out. And now it looks like DeMusliM is also starting to realize that, and he's coming in with the Spearman. So Veteran Spearman will hit the field. Men-at-arms being mixed in is always a nice tool, so I think that he should continue with that. And speaking of which, now he's got the 200 weapons and the men-at-arms, or the maces upgrade as well, taking a great fight inside the base of Viper. There are some crossbowmen, so ultimately he's going to lose all of these men-at-arms, but he managed to kill quite a few villagers from Viper. Idols 11 right now, so quite a lot of damage done on Viper's economy with this. And the men-at-arms, as I said, will ultimately get cleaned up. They're trying to find an angle to get some more villager kills, maybe on the berries whatsoever, and that's exactly what we're seeing, trying to get a surround on the vills. But it looks like DeMusliM is going to lose those men-at-arms, and Viper will have them cleaned up. Quick look at the villagers. That's 46 for DeMusliM, 38 for Viper. So, despite the fact that those men-at-arms got cleaned up, they did quite a lot of damage to Viper's base. And now you see the Landsknechte, the Spearman coming in. And look at this cluster of units. This is where the Landsknechte could be very useful. And if you get some Spearmen that are cheap, able to soak up a lot of arrow fire, and also have bonus damage against cavalry units like the War Elephants, they will do really well. So this is a very nice combination of infantry here. The men-at-arms will soak up a lot of arrow fire. The Landsknechte are great if they're not being targeted by the enemies, because if they're not being hit at all, it doesn't matter that they have low HP and their damage output is spectacular. And then you have the Spearman, which is just sort of the unit that's absorbing some damage. It's very cheap and you can just fill your army with it. And you see now the Landsknechte jumping on the crossbows. That's what they excel in. Massacring light infantry with their Zweihandlers, and Viper is going to tap out as the infantry overruns his food eco. DeMusliM looking super strong. Obviously, a side note to this show match is that despite the fact that these two players were the ones winning S-tier AoE 4 tournaments, that's the reason why they were selected by Nilly for this show match. So Viper won Genesis and DeMusliM won Steel Series. Viper hasn't been very active in AoE 4 recently, and of course, Steel Series is also the more recent tournament, Genesis was like 1 or 2 weeks after the release of the game, whereas SteelSeries was in December. So obviously, you would expect the win on SteelSeries to be a little more impactful when it comes to ranking the players. And of course, as I said, DeMusliM spent a lot more time playing the game than Viper did. Regardless of that, it is a 3-0 for DeMusliM, a very, very dominant showcase. I was expecting a slightly more intense or competitive show match, I would say, simply because, I was hoping for a lot of super fun games and long games. But we managed to take a look at some of the key changes of the January patch, and you could see them in action, probably for the first time. So, thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you check out the other videos on the channel as well, and see you in the next video.